I'll just start by saying a few words about the biofuels. Alfamir is going to be concentrating on the sugarcane production in Colombia, so I'll leave that to Alfamir to tell you information about that. And so instead I'll concentrate on two aspects of the global biofuel trade, which I'd like to make everybody aware of. One is the deception that underlies the entire concept of biofuels, the fake green renewable sustainability argument. And secondly, I'd like to talk about the broader reach of the biofuel, biomass, bioenergy, whatever you may call it, industry, and the devastating social and environmental impacts that occur in Colombia and throughout South America, throughout the global tropical and equatorial zone of the planet. That's South America, Africa, across Southern Asia and Southeast Asia, and the conditions that humans and the environment have to endure, and wildlife and fauna, flora, are very similar in that band around the world. Reason being that crops can grow a lot faster in the hot and humid conditions there than they can in the milder climate that we enjoy here in the rich north. So I'd just like to tell you a few words about biofuels. In the first decades of the millennium, biofuels were being presented by their advocates as a gift from the gods, because just when petroleum was peaking, there seemed to be this beautiful, green, clean, liquid fuel that could be put straight into our cars with little modification done to the engine. Corn and sugarcane ethanol, rapeseed, soy, and palm oil biodiesel were able to fuel our vehicles, but also be burned in power stations and fuel our homes and offices. But difficult questions started to be asked about biofuels come 2005, 2006, and by 2007 we experienced the first food price crisis of the new century. This led to riots around the world, and the World Bank, the OECD, and even Goldman Sachs attributed these food inconsistencies to biofuels. Goldman Sachs, interestingly, cited biofuels as a major cause of food insecurity because they were being accused of meddling in the food market, and so it was very convenient for them to say, it's not us, it's biofuels. But by this stage, a multi-million pound global industry had been built up around biofuels, and it was sustained by the illusion of greenness and renewableness that is, at this very moment today, still penetrating into the precious ecological systems that regulate the conditions that we require to sustain life on this planet. It's now known that bioenergy increases greenhouse gas emissions when a full life cycle impact assessment, including indirect impacts, is considered. So far from being carbon negative and renewable, biofuels are contributing to global warming in a measure comparable and in some cases greater than the fossil fuels that they are replacing. And feeding this huge, hungry beast requires vast monoculture plantations that create the human and environmental catastrophes that I've discussed, that I've mentioned already. So, despite strong opposition by civil society organisations, scientists, and even some very conservative institutions, the European Union put in place a mandatory 10% proportion of the biofuel mix in petroleum in every petrol pump by 2020. And the USA has a similar mandate. What this means is that biofuel investors will have guaranteed returns on their investment. So they love this, and they will lobby for a greater proportion of our transport fuel to come from biofuels to guarantee them larger returns on their investments. The illusion of greenness allows air transport, shipping transport, and any other form of automated transport to claim environmental responsibility and social integrity through using biofuels. Biofuels feature highly in the greenwash boasts that are made by the US Army, the US Air Force and the US Navy, who have probably got the cleanest, greenest killing machinists on the planet. This expansion of demand and consumption for transport biofuels is clearly unsustainable. But on top of this enormous ecological stress, Western governments have embarked on a crackpot initiative to replace their coal-burning power stations with biomass-burning power stations. The consequences of this are massive. One of the testing labs for this scheme is Britain. And Britain produces 10 million tons of wood annually. That's the maximum production that this island can produce. But it will require over 50 million tons of wood to feed simply the first tranche of of coal to biomass power stations that are planned. And on top of that, more biomass will be burned in new large dedicated biomass power stations. And it begs the question, where will this feedstock fuel come from? If already in the first initial stages we require 6 times the UK's total timber production. Now this development simply amplifies the well-known catastrophic consequences that we've already suffered from transport biofuel exploitation. It means an increase in land grabs, forced evictions of whole communities, driving them into poverty and threatening their community heritage, their cultural wisdom of their landscape, flora, fauna. It means deforestation, logging, burning, clear felling, the very thing that can save us from the excess carbon in the atmosphere, what we call the lungs of the planet. It also means pollution, because these monocultures need fertilizer, pesticides, fungicides, and these destroy biodiversity, cause disease in humans, they poison the water sources, they deplete the soil quality, but ridiculously, they ultimately fail in their purpose of protecting these close-packed, single-strain species of crop from disease. They consume vast quantities of water, imperiling the water drinking supply. They create food insecurity with price rises, shortages, and no fallback options. They create microclimates which interfere with weather systems, increase climate instability and unpredictability. And many millions of people who depend on the forests for their livelihood or part of their livelihood that livelihood is threatened by the demand for wood and the incursion of crop growers into recently felled, the land from which the forests have been recently felled. I could go on and on about these harmful lists, itemizing them, but I don't want to take more than 5 minutes of your time tonight. But I must mention that all of this facilitates corruption at all levels. The forging of title deeds, bribery, negligent monitoring, fake certification, and all manner of human skullduggery, right up to mass poisoning and assassinations. So that's what happens at the production end of the supply chain. Finally, I'd just like to say a few words about our end of the supply chain, the consumer end, and I want to elucidate how following all the appalling impacts I've just described, these bioenergy merchants managed to perpetrate a fraud on citizens here in Britain and in austerity-bashed north and west. By linking the price of biofuels to the price of oil, price volatility through speculation and market manipulation gets extended into land prices and food prices. Land with previously no commercial value suddenly acquires marketable qualities. And this establishes an inflationary mechanism that raises the price of land and therefore the price of all goods produced in an economy. A UN panel of experts has showed that biofuels are responsible for most of the demand growth for cereals and vegetable oils worldwide, and is thus a key driver in food volatility, food price volatility, and food price rises. There's another great blatant deception occurring too, as George Osborne's Green Investment Bank has awarded £100 million to Drax Power Station to effect its conversion from coal to biomass. The Financial Times this week reported that the government will further underwrite another £75 million for this coal to biomass conversion. Now, that's terrible, but it doesn't end there, because the fraud goes deeper. What are called ROCs, or Renewable Obligation Certificates, which are the carbon credits that the European Union has termed them. These are not paid by the energy companies. These are actually added on to the consumers' bills. So this means that we all, as taxpayers, are funding these mass infrastructure projects to effect this grossly dangerous conversion to biomass. And then we pay again in our bills for what's called the renewable premium. And we will be paying in full for this renewable premium. If current UK industry plans are implemented, the consumer will be paying £3 billion a year for these renewable obligation certificates. So this means that in this country, in a sense, it's a reflection of the human injustices in the global south, because the old, the unemployed, the less abled members of our society will be driven further into poverty by paying this fraudulent green premium to mega-rich multinational corporations for what is essentially a great big green lie. So now I can say, perhaps we understand why these financial geniuses think that they deserve their massive bonuses. Geniuses. So that's what I've got to say on biofuels. Thank you very much.